Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this afternoon. We are talking about drones with these three really interesting panelists. And I would like to start with a question to Christian. He has had a career in the Bundeswehr, and he's actually a pilot. Christian, do you trust people flying airplanes more than you trust computers flying airplanes?
Yes. So I would strongly hesitate now entering an airplane that is flown by a computer. But I think when we talk about unmanned aviation, this is a very, very far future coming in those terms, yes.
Mm-hmm. The title of this panel is quite ambitious. 2020, drones everywhere. There's a question mark behind it, but we could discuss this. Christian, what's your view? How far or how long do we have to wait until drones are really everywhere, or at least visible in everyday life?
Well, prediction is always hard, especially about the future. So I think that we will see a step-by-step integration of drones in the airspace, and this is, I think, one of the major obstacles. Of course, there is business that can be done with drones. It can be more effective or more efficient than the existing solution. So it could be a substitute for something that is done currently, or a completely new business case. And I think the two major challenges are airspace integration in terms of manned-unmanned systems. And yeah, the other one is that it's currently more or less unpractical and not allowed to fly automatic. So beyond visual line of sight, it's really hard to get the permission for that. But this will be the major first step to get very much more business cases than we have today. And automatic flying is also very difficult. And I'm not talking about autonomous. Automatic is always problematic enough. So most of the systems currently are remotely piloted, and yeah, we will have to do some research on that in the future, and the regulatory bodies need to address that, I think.
Maxim, David, how about you?
So I think drones already are everywhere. I have friends in San Francisco that complain that, like, every day they see a drone zipping by their bedroom window, and they're concerned. I mean, there are 400,000 drones sold every month right now, and it's not decreasing. So I think we're already there. The applicability is not quite there yet. I mean, they're perceived as toys, right? That's still the case. Media does have real use for them. There's a lot of other uses. But the biggest amount of drones today are perceived as toys. And that's going to change, I think, in the next couple of years. Faster in other areas of the world. It's going to take a little longer in Europe due to regulatory reasons. But it's going to be coming.
I agree what he said. We will see drones specifically in emerging markets on consumer purposes much more earlier than in markets like us due to regulatory issues, but not only. In cities like Manila, Jakarta, Mexico City, the situation is much more different. Yeah? The problems are higher, and the willingness to find new solutions that might be solved via drones is more open in these areas than it is in Berlin or in London.
Mm-hmm. We've talked a little bit beforehand, and the topic of the image of drones has popped up. You've mentioned it too. In Germany, the focus is very much on security. Do you see that changing, Christian?
Well, when the technology is maturing and people are starting to get experiences with drones, can distinguish between the private sector, recreational use, the toys. A lot of them are sold in these areas, and the commercial use. And 2 years ago, I was hesitating to use the word drones because it had such a negative connotation. And currently, I think this is a little bit changing. And we need to do we need to get some more experiences and to realize that this can be much safer than other applications, for example. So if you use a drone for a particular business case and you can be cheaper, you could also be saving lives, because many of the manned applications in the field of commercial flying are very dangerous to the people. Like the crop dusting done by drones can save lives of agricultural pilots. And I see a very great gap in the aviation legislation between development in threshold countries and in Europe. So the technology, and North America as well. So the countries where the technology is coming from are not those countries where it will be applied in the first time. Because they are very strict on safety and security, and they have a very strong relationship to manned aviation in the history. And so, yeah, it's going to be harder in Europe. Or seeing distribution logistics, I think, will be, like Maxim said earlier, in Lagos, in Mumbai, Kinshasa, not in Paris, London, Madrid. So,
let's get to the business models the two of you are representing, because you're actually working with or for drones. Maxim, Ellie is collecting and analyzing data, particularly from mega cities in the emerging markets. And you're currently working with a major international retailer whom you can't name, unfortunately, to develop future scenarios, how to use those data, and you're also developing the software for them. Could you tell us a little more about
Sure.
what you're doing and what you're planning?
Yes, I'm happy to explain the case, and actually it's a spin-off from our core business. We provide software as a service to public transportation companies. And by that, we can use the smartphones of the passengers and buses as sensors to know where the bus is going, at what speed, at what direction, and at what location they are. So we spoke with some very interesting people a few months ago from a larger worldwide retailer. And they said, listen, for instance, in Jakarta, we have the problem that if a consumer orders a DVD or whatever he can order online, it takes quite some time to deliver the good from the warehouse, which is out of Jakarta, to the city. It sometimes, even for a small DVD, takes 3 to 4 days because the lorry, the van, is stuck in traffic jam all the time. Now, obviously, those guys are working on solutions that can be met via drones. And our idea was that if the drone starts at the warehouse, which is outside of the city, yeah, it'll fly into the city, and because the battery is a load too, yeah, so the battery needs battery or energy to transport the battery. So the smaller the battery, the more other things that drone can transport. So the question was, what can it do to absorb or to minimize the battery? So the idea is that the drone lands on the rooftops of the buses. Yeah, this might sound completely crazy or science fiction to you, but it's really serious models that we're thinking about. So it would be kind of a bus hopping, rooftop to rooftop to rooftop, taking the velocity and the speed of the buses that have speed in the city and that have special lanes in the city, and then hop, 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 and you only have the first mile and the last mile. Yeah? First time we spoke about that, it really felt like Star Wars or Star Trek, but it's actually possible to build a system like that. And what we provide to the drone, or to the software, or to the GPS of the drone, is the location of the bus, where it can land, the velocity of the bus, how fast it is going, and of course the direction of the bus. You want that drone on the bus rooftop going obviously into the direction of where it needs to deliver the good. So this is what we're working on right now. Yeah, it's an exciting thing because it also means a new business model to the bus operator. Yeah, a Dala bus operator in Dar es Salaam would have never thought that it could make money by renting the rooftop. So these are all new sorts of business models and solutions that will arise from drones delivering more value to consumers.
And you've already said you're thinking about cities like Jakarta. It wouldn't work here because, of course, it wouldn't be legal to operate such a system. Do you think that could change?
Oh, obviously, but we think that, again, the willingness to install or introduce such system is much higher in, again, cities like Jakarta, Manila, Mexico City, because of the problems that consumers face. If we today order a book online, the probability is pretty high that that book can be shipped next day. Yeah? That's not the case in Jakarta. You wait a long time until that gets shipped. So the willingness by regulators, but not only regulators, the consumers are open to that too. They say, hey, yeah, let's try something like this out. Obviously, we'll see then drones on bus rooftops. We'll see drones in the city. So I think the openness of the citizens or the consumers in these regions is also much higher than it is here.
Is the legislation in any of these places such that you could introduce it in a realistic or near time space?
Well, I know that certain city councils are opening up parts of the city where you can test it. This is now the next step. Next year, 2016, systems like this will be tested in restricted areas of these cities, and that's happening actually right now.
David, I'm almost done building a little house here in Berlin. Would you advise me to install a drone detector? Because there will be drones all around in my personal aerospace in 2020.
I would say it depends on your security requirements, right? So Dedrone is all about drone detection, right? Which is the first part of an answer to how do I defend myself against drones, right? The root cause of your question. I don't want them flying in my backyard because I want to have my privacy. Is a good reason. Security is the next step. Like we are working with prisons, we're working with airports, all for these security reasons because they need to know if somebody is smuggling drugs, weapons into a prison. If it happens, they at least need forensic evidence to know where exactly it was delivered. Best case, of course, they prevent it by sending somebody there. In Germany, maybe in other countries, there are more provocative countermeasures possible, which is also a piece of the legislation we're working on. And that is the whole security puzzle. And I don't even want to start imagining the things you could do on a bad guy scale using drones. And we're not even close, right? Everybody can walk into Conrad next door in Germany, buy a $500 drone, attach a sack of flour to it, and fly it somewhere with lots of people. It doesn't take more than that. So I think it's very relevant. What we do, what our technology does, is it provides you a very precise location where the drone is. It allows you to track the drone across your property. So with your house, we would be able to tell you, hey, there's a drone approaching. We will be able to tell you exactly where it is. And in retrospect, you could follow its path and maybe identify the source itself. And that's what our business model revolves around, giving you that insight, either by you procuring our hardware, which we are manufacturing in Germany, or by providing a managed service to enable you to do so.
How many customers do you have today in Germany?
We have like a handful of customers, 10 customers that are sitting in Germany, which include prisons, which include private enterprises that have heightened security requirements, and a couple in the US that we are also currently working on. And we are working with the airport to enable them to detect drones in their environment.
Dedrone has just gathered another 2.7 million in capital this summer. How are you planning to use that money to develop the system further, to expand into new markets? What are you doing with that?
We already used lots of it to create our factory in Kassel to be able to mass produce hardware. The former speaker said it very nicely, hardware is hard, but the mix is what makes a solution, right? A large part of our solution is software-based, providing signatures to understand what kind of drone you're seeing, not only detecting, but classifying it, having a central solution to pull together the data, but also building a reference hardware that uses all the sensorics available to detect a drone. And that's also something we're working on, expanding into new territories, radar, laser, and expanding the range of these sensors to give you a better detection capability.
I'm glad you mentioned the factory, because we've talked about bits and bytes a lot today, and we're actually talking hardware now and producing the instruments we need for those business cases. And this brings me back to what Christian said in our talk beforehand, because one of the things you like to stress is that you need to develop the right drone for the right business case. But isn't that terribly hard, thinking that a drone is not a trivial thing to construct or develop?
Yes and no. It's always good to have a certain business case and a demand from the customer, and you try to develop a certain product to fit that demand. But often it's the case, especially in small companies that manufacture drones, that they build up the drone and then they have it, and then they wait and say, okay, what can we do with it? But it's better to say we have a certain application, and we want to fly not 300 meters, but we want to fly 30 kilometers. How has the drone has to be look like? And coming from the systems engineering aspect there, I think it's better the other way around, just to say, or to talk to the customer very in beforehand and not saying, okay, I have something here, who could be the customer, and to find out. Because you have very big gap between, let's say, the typical German drone manufacturer with, I don't know, 5 units per month to DJI in China with 800,000 per year. These are a lot of economies of scale, and it's not really a manufacture anymore. Yeah, I think then most of these units manufactured and sold from DJI are used for private purposes, but some of them also are used by commercial applications because they have a appropriate quality. So yeah, I think it's a good idea that the technology guys and the business guys are sitting together and saying, okay, we are now developing something especially for that use case together with the customer.
We've touched the question of legislation a couple of times in this round already, and we've heard from the speaker before us that legislation in Germany is actually reasonable. Do you agree? Let's say we start with you again.
Yes. In comparison to other European countries, when we talk about commercial use, not private. Commercial use, you don't need a drone pilot license in Germany, you do not need an operator's license for your legal entity, you do not need certification for your drone, which is different in many, many other European countries. And even 1 year ago, commercial flying in the United States was not allowed. So making aerial pictures in the United States was not a legal business case. And yeah, it is not so easy to change that because it's a new technology and people are not used to it, some are afraid of it, and applying new technology to an existing legal system is always hard. Just to try to imagine inventing the bicycle today under our certain and very safe and secure circumstances would be impossible because one person sits on a piece of metal and is driving, and if it stops, it can fall down. You would never get certification and product application for that today. So yeah, this is the way we are used to it. It's no problem, and we see it not as a threat or as a danger, but driving bicycle, especially in Berlin, is very dangerous. So
I know. How about you, Maxim?
I completely agree with what Christian said. We see more the challenge on the acceptance from citizens, from consumers. Even the name drone has, of course, a military connotation, which for anyone in the room is not a positive. I think that poses lots of problems on us. In terms of legislation, government and executive branch, their openness to allow us to test these business cases, to test these ideas is very high, is increasingly high. The people working in government, both on municipal, regional and federal, even European level, is very open in our experience on that. Yet again, the population's perspective on drones is almost a catastrophe, to be honest. Yeah? And I think it'll take some time here until we get to a more relaxed approach with that.
It's a heated debate. I mean, whenever I talk to people about drones and point out the security risks inherent to using them, they are shocked, right? I mean, every one of you, money being the only issue, can walk into a store, buy a drone, and fly it in Germany. That's legal for a private person if you're not doing it in a non-commercial way. You don't need any kind of training, and you don't know what will happen, right? I mean, if something goes wrong with the drone, it could go anywhere. And that's quite the risk, right? I think it's always tricky with new technology. There is no good answer, and there is no good legislation when you start. I think it's good that you have the ability to experiment. I had the pleasure to listen to a talk of Mr. Janke before. I think it's important to understand what is possible and then take slow, measured steps to make sure that you keep the most worrisome things constrained while allowing innovation to happen. And I think Germany is on a good path for that. Everybody's thinking about drone registries, maybe a piloting requirement, some kind of driving license, and I think that's relatively reasonable because it allows you to, at least when a drone crashes or something bad happens, it at least allows you to track who might have had that drone. It doesn't really help you with the bad guys because they build their own drones and do whatever they want, but like 95% of drones are, oh, oops.
We have a couple of minutes left. If there are any questions, the three of our panelists will be happy to answer them. Nobody's asking questions today because we've extensively...
there's one.
There's one, great. Would you come up to one of the mics here?
Hi.
Thanks.
My name is Hagen and I'm working for SAP and I'm responsible for retailers in northern Germany. And my curious question is, how can retailers also use this technology maybe in the year 2020? I heard of you, Maxim, that there are new business models out there, but what else can we use for retailers?
Okay, more business ideas.
Ooh, you know, put me here on the spot. Retailers should answer that, or you guys might have more ideas on that. As I said, I think what will happen now in the next years to come is, as we see these products being more and more in place, new ideas will arise. To be honest, I don't have an idea on the spot, but what we've seen is, you know, not only talking about drones and how they can affect business models in cities, but actually implementing them and testing them. We'll start a vivid discussion on that, and I've seen it happening in our case. We certainly did not start our company providing data for drones, not at all. But overall, we then saw that our data can help drones, you know, flying, hopping in the city. So I think there are many, many, many businesses out there that don't even know yet that they can contribute to such models and ideas. But I don't know them myself, to be honest. Maybe my colleagues here know.
It's a technical game, right? I mean, a drone can carry a couple of kilograms of payload. It can fly for 20 minutes easily today. There is a startup in Estonia that just built a delivery robot that goes on the ground, on the sidewalk, semi-autonomously. What kind of wares do you have that are in that range, and where a customer would be willing to pay for a ship immediately offer? And I think there is quite a sizable amount of that out in the market there, right? And I think that's where it's going. What kind of wares do you have? Who would be willing to pay for it? I'm sitting at home, I'm cooking, and I'll really need that ginger to finish my fantastic dessert. And I'm willing to give you $10 extra for it if you ship it to me in the next 10 minutes.
Our time's up. Thank you very much for the question. Thank you, everybody here on the panel, for the insights into your business models and into your work, everyday work with drones. And we're handing the stage over to the next panel. Thank you.